Welcome to this explainer. I am Rooftop. Today, we are dismantling a massive myth in modern luxury design. We are looking straight at the anatomy of the living room. We will separate true spatial strategy from empty gestures. Let me ask you this directly. Does height actually equal luxury? Developers constantly sell soaring ceilings. Buyers eagerly pay for massive scale. They walk into a vast void and instantly mistake it for wealth. But does that vertical space actually perform? We must challenge this default assumption right now.
The truth is simple. The double-height living room is usually a status prop. It is certainly not a spatial strategy. Modern design defaults to these massive open volumes for one very obvious reason. They photograph beautifully, they signal incredible scale to anyone walking through the front door. But scale without purpose is lazy architecture. It is built entirely for the camera. It is not built for the people actually living there.
Let us consider the complete failures of this default volume. Volume without a functional reason creates a massive conditioning load. Your mechanical systems are forced to work tirelessly just to manage trapped heat. Then you have uncontrolled acoustics. Conversations echo endlessly across distant walls. Entertaining guests becomes a challenge instead of a pleasure. There are no clear sightlines. There is zero connection to an upper gallery. The room is vast but functionally dead. This kind of space isolates the inhabitants rather than bringing them together. The ultimate result is what I call expensive air. A double-height space without a structural purpose is a pure liability. It lacks thermal function, it lacks visual function, it simply exists to be large. You pay a heavy premium to construct those towering walls. You pay another premium to glaze the facade. Then you pay every single month just to cool that empty void. It gives you absolutely nothing in return. That is not architecture, that is just expensive air. We absolutely must pivot toward deliberate design. We need to separate decorative volume from functional volume. Decorative volume is hollow and pointless. Functional volume works hard. It earns its place in the structural section of a legacy property. Let us examine 3 deliberate and highly effective applications of vertical height. First is the functional stairwell. An intentional stairwell uses verticality as an active tool. It pulls daylight deep into the very core of the home. It captures the sun right at the roofline and guides it 2 full floors down. The height has a dedicated end-specific job. It becomes an active conduit for natural light. The volume acts like a radiant lantern for the entire structure. Second is the mezzanine. Imagine a properly placed study that overlooks the main living space. You maintain a beautiful visual connection to the grand volume below, but you also preserve total privacy. This creates a brilliant and clear hierarchy of space. The height facilitates interaction between different zones of the house without destroying their distinct boundaries. Third is the light well. This strategy proves that height can actively work with the environment. A well-designed light well turns ceiling height into a passive cooling strategy. Hot air naturally rises and escapes through the top. It replaces a heavy mechanical burden with a natural and highly elegant solution. The volume is no longer a heat trap. It literally becomes the lungs of the house. Height must perform a duty. Every single cubic meter inside a legacy home must justify its existence. When you integrate elements like light wells and thermal chimneys, the building finally works for you. The aesthetic beauty of a high ceiling becomes a natural byproduct of masterful engineering. Form finally follows function in the truest sense. If you are commissioning a legacy property, you must ask one critical question. Why exactly does this volume exist? Anyone can build tall. Any developer can stack arbitrary square footage. Contractors can easily raise a roofline with steel and glass. But mere height is not design. You must interrogate the plans and demand a solid reason for the space you are funding. You must demand architecture that actually works. We have to move beyond the simple wow factor. Very few architects can actually explain their massive volumes. They rely entirely on the initial shock of a giant room, but they cannot articulate its true purpose beyond the very first walkthrough. Once that initial awe fades, you simply live in a hollow shell. The wow factor becomes nothing more than a distraction from lazy design. Intentionality is the ultimate metric here. The ability to explain a spatial strategy is what separates a masterfully designed space from a merely expensive one. Expensive air is incredibly common. True functional architecture is extremely rare. So when you evaluate your next property, look up at those soaring ceilings and ask yourself a very simple question. Is this volume working for the building, or am I just paying for the air?